Welcome to Empire State of Grind, a podcast about the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. Please be advised that the hosts of this podcast are practicing lawyers or other professionals in the tech industry, and that some of the guest employers on this podcast may be clients of the hosts. The information and content provided during this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal or financial advice, or as the positions or stances of the employers of any of the individuals.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Empire State of Grind, the show where we learn about the people building the next wave of tech companies in and out of New York City. On today's episode, we are joined by Yael Goldstein, lead product manager at Regal.ai, a company creating the generative AI CX platform for high consideration industries such as healthcare, financial and home services, and education. We are joined by our awesome co-host Kieran Bath, and together the three of us discuss what Yael is up to at Regal and the current state of human and AI interactions. We also dive into each of our artistic backgrounds and even share some mottos we've modeled behavior after in our lives. And of course, we learn more about what makes NYC so great. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of Empire State of Grind. I'm here today with my co-host Kieran Bath, and we have Yael Goldstein, the lead product manager at Regal.ai.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we get into Yael's background and role, Kieran, you want to introduce yourself to the audience? I got a lot of questions asking who's your awesome co-host and
Love that. Happy to. Yeah, the elusive Kieran Bath. Well, Aaron and I, in a past life, were colleagues at Datadog. I've moved on and I'm still now working in product counseling. I'm kind of in the world of blockchain and crypto now. I'm a former antitrust geek. I love all things SaaS and cloud, always will. And yeah, really excited to be here. And of course, I should also let it be known that I do write on the side, and I wrote a book as well, a literature book of poems. So
You're kidding.
exactly. I was like, I think Karen can tell who she is better than I. But moving on, Yael, nice to have you here. Sorry,
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Ironically, you're formerly Datadog as well. That's where we met, but it feels like you guys never met there.
I know. I don't know how it happened.
Doesn't really make you probably have more in common.
It just got too big. It had all those floors, a big cafeteria and kitchen, and
didn't get into enough legal trouble. I think
it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, the truth is we didn't really have proper product counsel probably until after you left.
Yeah,
and we both kind of moved into that role. I had I was taking care of the bare necessities or whatever. But anyway, all right. So you're over at Regal.ai now, right? So if you don't mind telling us a little about the company, like what does it do, and then maybe some stats about size and where you're at.
So it was founded in 2020 by Alex Levin and Rebecca Green, who are the co-founders. They started out at Handy, which was acquired by Angie, and they became execs there. And if you're not familiar, they sell home services. And at the time, they were tasked with basically growing the business. And like everyone in the pandemic, they shifted all of their marketing and sales money towards digital ads. And it turned out that when people got to the site, they didn't necessarily buy. So they realized there's this issue here. They played around with using phone calls instead to get that conversion and reach out to customers, and that worked really well. So they built a CCaaS solution, and that's what Regal.ai is. Awesome. Nowadays, we've had a pivot, so we sell a phone AI agent built on top of a CCaaS solution, and it's really for B2C, high touch, high consideration purchases. So it's not retail, it's teams that would actually have a sales team that's dedicated to talking to people about insurance or educational services or finance services. Because we realize that, this doesn't just work for home services. People buying high touch items actually want to talk to a human being to make that decision. And I would say since then we've expanded to support teams and claims teams as well.
That's cool. So I know you had suggested, I did, I think you did too, right? That we actually try out interacting with one of the agents. So I'm curious, Karen, which product line did you choose?
I did too, actually.
Okay, cool.
I did the one which I think was inspired by Handy, where your co-founders worked.
Nice.
Which is, the use case is that I use this subscription cleaning service once a month, and now I'm interested in either changing my model or have a concern. So I called up And it was a very natural sounding, conversational, human sounding voice, which was great. And we did get straight to it. And it's funny because I even heckled a bit. I think they were asking.
I'm glad you.
They were asking.
Trying to mess it up.
That's right. Like, do you want to switch to just twice a week? Do you want to switch to once a month? I ended up cancelling, but it was a pretty seamless, just normal process. It was, good experience.
You feel like you were aware it was an AI agent even if you didn't know?
Okay, to be fair, but obviously confirmation bias, I knew. But I would say in the case of the handy cleaning one, I might have not known. In the second one I tried out, which was, I think that was the legal help. That was a little bit more political. Yeah, okay, how did you find that one?
I thought it was good. It definitely got like what the goal would be to accomplish the goal, which I guess was screening. Do I have a case they would want to handle, and then scheduling a time to talk to one of the staff attorneys?
Yeah.
So in that regard, I felt like as the potential client, it was helpful. I would say I was aware it was not a human, but didn't really matter because I'm
right.
And I think in that situation too, like it was as if I had a car accident, I guess, right? And so do I have a claim, and when am I available to talk to somebody? As an attorney, that would make sense for me to know ahead of time, like what are some of the specifics. So I figure it passes that information on, which sounds cool.
It's interesting. I think a lot of people, their first question is really like, do you believe that it's human? And that is an interesting angle, and we've had like customers say I gave this to my daughter and like she didn't, and I didn't tell her and she like didn't pick up on it, right? And that's kind of cool because a year ago the technology was not there, like you would have definitely been able to tell.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I think the way we're looking at it now, it's less about replacing humans. Like we're not going to replace all human interactions, and maybe the AI will get that smart in like a year or two's time, right? But there's a tone and there were some things that you were able to pick up on, but it's really about saving the human agent's time on really simple interactions. Like, okay, when are you available? Oh, this time doesn't work. Let me find another time. And the qualification, which is a really tedious process. And imagine even most of the time, like people aren't even picking up the phone, right? So if an AI agent can listen for that and say, okay, I'm going to save you the time. You're not even going to talk to this person. I'm going to leave a personalized voice note. Then that can end up saving a lot of money in the cost center and driving throughput. And I would say on the legal side, and I'm very curious to get your take, but right now, like I think all of the customers that are using our AI agent are prefacing the calls with that. So it's not even like we're trying to trick our customers into thinking like this is a human person. It's like, hi, this is Ava, an AI agent here to help you.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't asking because I thought I actually was asking because it was impressively close to human. Surprisingly close to human. There were little, I think, like verbal tics that I maybe would have picked up on. And to your point, like, of course you're biased, like I know this, but it was pretty impressive. And I work with a lot of other, I guess I'd say AI companies, but they're not interacting in like a voice way, you know what I mean? Like that's supposed
pretty
to mimic
new
human behavior. Yeah, I bet. A lot of it is more about like the business intelligence you can gather from either maybe listening or picking up on behavioral patterns.
Yeah, I agree. I think like our thesis here is that if you can collect as much information about customers to personalize the interaction, it's probably going to go better.
For sure.
And this from being on, like maybe you haven't been on the end of sales calls per se, but like support calls, right? Someone picks up, they're like, what's your name?
Yeah,
what
it's
do you
very
need?
routine, yes.
Like very monotonous.
I called my bank today. Yeah, every time they transfer you, it's like they have to verify you again, which is really annoying.
Yeah, I'm like, why doesn't the info just pass through?
Yeah.
What's the infrastructure underneath? So the idea is you can collect that little bit of information with an AI agent. And we also support human agents, obviously, to do that. And then you can use that to figure out, okay, when is the best time to call next? What is the prep needed for the agent to have the most personalized outreach? And then with AI as well in composing, SMS messages or email messages based on the information that you've already collected to make sure that you're really meeting the needs of your customer.
You know who has been using a text version of this for a long time is actually the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. So some of our audience might know I'm like a pretty avid poker player, so I'm in Vegas a lot, and that's my like preferred hotel. They've been using like a virtual like concierge for probably like, I don't know if 10 years is too long, but more than 5, that texts you if like, let's say you want to make a dinner reservation or whatever. Right. And I'm almost positive there's not a human being on the other end of it.
Do you use it?
Oh yeah.
And does it recommend like good spots?
It's like calling people. It's like I'm gonna get tossed around 10 different places. Her name is Rose. She's quite lovely. But I don't think they've elevated it to a like voice interaction, which I actually found nice because it feels like more confirming.
I'm wondering actually, Yael. So I was listening to a podcast today where they were talking about how there used to be. This is all coming from this concept of robot processing automation, RPA. And there was a lot of promise around what that would do, which was pretty much this work of like agents that could really seamlessly automate very mundane routine tasks. But I think it overpromised and it didn't really get there. I don't know if the logic wasn't there, the context, but I think that is a huge kind of gap now that proper generative AI can fill. So what Regal.ai is doing is the exact kind of proper plug for this. But it's just so timely because I was hearing about it today, and it's, while maybe not as like sexy sounding as like other AI use cases that we hear about or like hyped up ones, it's kind of what is the internal stitching of a company, because it can kind of replace huge loads of like automated tasks for
this
is
is actually a big application of AI right now. Is like I guess the easier way to say it, I don't know if there's maybe you know the better market term, but it's like replacing call center workers, right? Like how are these simple, repeatable interactions replaced with an AI agent, right? And is that kind of like what you see in your customer base as well, or?
I think so. I think the shift is already happening on the customer service side.
Yeah, exactly.
We think in 2 years' time, 90% of interactions will be replaced by AI, primarily on the customer service side. I think in like healthcare or insurance, like there still needs, I think it's partially emotional, right? Like you want to have like a human that you're connecting with that's your rep because it feels high risk to you. And obviously you're still meeting with doctors or nurses or whatever. But yeah, like any of the logistics of educating the customer or booking appointments, you're not going to need a human for. I think the positioning of that is really hard. Like it's something we're thinking through.
Yes, I agree. That's the social context of it is like new still.
Yeah.
That's why I was a little, I think that's the other part of like the asking, did you notice it was a human or not? Because it's like, how do you feel talking to something you know isn't human? Is like a new, my guess is people will get more used to it and be okay with it if they have positive interactions. But in the beginning, it is a little weird. Today was a good day, by the way, for me to test it out because I did have to call my bank about something important, and I talked to multiple humans.
You got the baseline.
And it wasn't great, to be honest. Like I felt this could have been shortened at least on my end. Especially when I'm like calling for a service that they should just offer online anyway. I know they don't, so I had to call, but
I agree with you. I mean, personally, I still find it weird, and I'm testing this stuff, right? So like I haven't gotten used to how good it is, and I think to like the media and the apocalyptic sort of like movies that we see where robots are running the world. No, but I think in this context, like because I've had so many frustrating interactions, like you, it does feel like a good step forward. And I would say in practice, our customers are, and we look for in transcripts, like, are they saying like, connect me to a human now, or like, stop talking to me, a robot? And like, it rarely happens. And we preface that it's an AI agent. Like, I think really they just want to get something done on the call as quickly
100%.
as possible.
Yes.
So I think there will be that acceptance, but it tends to be like one of the biggest objections we get is like, really, we're going to connect our customers to AI. Like, is that going to be a good experience?
Yeah, that's a societal thing that, you know, that trend will, I guess, kind of have to see where it goes. I'm a little, not a little, I'm actually very curious about like, what is the product that you sell to the customer, right? Because they have to, I guess, make it fit whatever they're doing, right? So
Yeah.
like, what do you give them? How do they?
Yeah, good question. So it's a web app, and one of the views focuses on building this AI agent and testing it and iterating on it. I think that's one of the pros, by the way, is you can just update the prompt and it'll just learn something as opposed to having to train a human. So you basically put together, okay, what is your company about? What are the goals of the company? We set you up with a phone number that you're calling from. With the AI phone agent specifically, because it's not a person, you can also decide things like how many calls should it place per available human agent, so that if someone does want to transfer to a human, I can. So I can call, 5 people at a time and assume only one of them will pick up.
Yep.
Or I can call 10 people at a time and assume 2 will pick up, but only 1 will want to transfer to a human, right? So you can sort of do that math in your head. And then we also have a transcription feature set. So we transcribe the calls, we analyze the sentiment with AI, we pick up on trackers with AI as well. So you can say, I'm interested in these qualification calls if people bring up competitors in this space. And so we'll automatically search for competitors in this space or any phrases that sound like, okay, I'm actually browsing around other solutions. And then we'll have reporting on that for you as well. And then I would say, the rest of our solution set was built before the phone AI agents. And it's interesting, this company actually found product market fit long before this like speech AI stuff. And it was just on the CCaaS platform. So it's an orchestration solution. So we're an event-based communication platform. We're based on indications of interest that customers are showing, like say they added something to their cart, or they sent in an email, or they canceled their subscription, right? Based on all of these events, you can decide, what do I want to do next in the funnel? I want to schedule an AI call to this person, and then I want to trigger an automated text following up on that conversation.
But you can say something specific to their interaction.
Exactly.
Versus just like a cold call because they visited the site or whatever.
Yeah, and because we're storing all the customer data as well, that we're picking up on these calls and that we're getting from, custom CRMs or Salesforce, whatever the brand plugs in, HubSpot, whichever website clicks, things like that, we can tailor the outreach to the customer. So, for example, calling them during their time zone as opposed to in the middle of the night.
So you're like industry customer agnostic in that, because I saw examples from like insurance to legal to arranging cleaning services. So your customer could be anyone.
Yeah, it could be anyone. I would say, I think where we've had to differentiate, and I specifically own the agent experience, so I've had to think about what are the different kinds of personas we handle, is distinguish between agents that own leads, like that have a one-on-one relationship and stick with them for years and years, like doctors or like an insurance rep, and then, the SDRs that call just to qualify, one time. There's different feature sets for each. But yeah, we accommodate everyone. And more recently, the customer service teams. And
right, the one you interact with, you would expect to differentiate customer to customer and have some background on me. And if it's my doctor, why I'm calling you, what my condition is, or... Yeah,
I think your measures of success are also different, right?
For sure.
It's about retention, maybe in that case, or positive reviews from the customer, or maybe upsells. Whereas like someone who works in lead qualification or customer service might be measured more on efficiency.
Right.
Like I want to do things as quickly as possible, so like automate many more of my flows. For example, at the end of a call, it's typical in a communication platform, you summarize the conversation with notes.
Yep.
So now we can do this with AI too, but like for large call centers,
everyone's doing that, right?
Everyone's doing that, right? But if efficiency is really important, like don't make agents do that. Like after a certain amount of time, just like get it out of their way, connect them to the next person. Whereas like an insurance expert might not want you to take that agency away from them. They might say, I know best how to manage my time and when to reach out to which person, and don't shove work on me. Basically, let me decide.
We're going to take a short break to hear from one of our sponsors, but when we come back, we'll learn about how Yael got into tech and learn about her music background and current creative projects. And spoiler alert, we're going to learn some embarrassing history about me.
This episode is brought to you by NextGen Law. NextGen Law supports today's modern tech companies. bringing expertise in drafting and negotiating customer contracts and scaling of go-to-market legal functions. For more information, visit nextgenlaw.com. That's nextgenlaw with hyphens in between each word.com.
I suppose like in putting this together, was there a lot of market research across like pre-existing models like this and just kind of refining from that?
You know, I think it actually started the other way. Like normally we would, especially in the CCaaS world, because we're not the first CCaaS solution, but with phone agents specifically, like there's not a lot out there. There are companies that build speech AI by themselves, right? Or phone agents on their own, but they're not connected to customer data. They're not connected to the orchestration suite. So I think for us, this was the bet. Like we weren't seeing other people do it, but we saw that phone brings such higher business outcomes than SMS or chat.
I think for the markets that you're in, for sure.
Yeah.
So like we've discussed a lot of, I guess, like what you would call service interactions. And I think for that makes a lot of sense. Business can be a little different.
Yeah.
I think you're more used to email and a phone call seems like an escalation versus like your doctor. It's like, I've never emailed my doctor. I call them or I use like, shout out to One Medical. I use them and like they have a good app. So we'll message on an app. But like, and a few others have that too. But you know what I'm saying? Like I've flipped maybe a dozen houses in my life. I've never emailed any of them, any of the contractors or like phone is the more human way of
more
connecting.
Engaging, right?
Yeah.
It's quicker. It feels like,
indirect. Like, hey, if this is important, you're going to pick up, right?
Yeah.
I think that's part of it too.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It might phase out over time, like as, we're used to a phone call. As it shifts to AI, does the next generation, it's not used to that. And
I mean, on a personal level, like I feel like I have 3 younger sisters, like people text and use Instagram chat way more than phone. I used to call my friends, like, how are you doing? Can you help me with math homework?
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting to figure out what people's communication styles are these days because they're so varied.
I think it's changed.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's individual.
Yeah.
Like I kind of cross generations in some ways, and it's definitely different. Like texting with like my dad is transactional, I feel.
Yeah. No, when someone that's right. Way to put out there. No, when someone calls me, I'm like, oh, who died or who like it's
depending on who it is, right?
Depending on who it is. Because otherwise it's much more around text or actually voice notes have made a real comeback.
Yeah.
Actually.
I hate them just because I don't know how to do it right, I feel. Like I record it as if I'm writing speech to text sometimes. And I'm like, wait, that was wrong. Yeah. Like literally like pause. And I'm like, oh no, they're going to hear that. Yeah.
I'll show you.
But to your point, it's funny. Brian and I were texting earlier and then he was like, hey man, I tried to call you. I was at the gym. So my phone just sucks at the gym, so I didn't see that he tried to call.
Yeah.
And to your point, I was like, what went wrong?
Yeah.
And then he left me a few voice notes, and it was like nothing went wrong. It was just going to be faster.
Yeah.
And we're of like the same generation, and we've also been friends a long time, so we talk on the phone a lot. But to your point, yeah, it could be. My first thought was like, oh no, why would you call me?
I definitely prefer phone. So yeah, depending on the person, I might. If they've never called me before, I might think something's wrong.
Yeah.
I think, especially after the pandemic, when people started like hanging out in person, doing video, like having energy to like interact with other human beings, I started noticing more my friends' preferences. And because they were different, I think I've had to become more flexible. Like, if I want to keep this person in my life, like I have to adapt to their communication style. And I think that's been true, by the way, on the business side too. Like,
for sure.
I think companies are realizing like we have to meet customers where they're at, and we have to offer the options, and then
it's actually like a pretty well-known tenet of human psychology that like to connect with people, you actually want to mimic their communication style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like speaking their tone and maybe how their tempo or whatever you would call it, is a way of connecting with people. And I wonder how true that is on like a digital format as well, but I'm guessing it's the same. Like if I text someone, what's up, and they text me something like super formal, right? You're like, oh man.
I think that's got to be true. Like it feels right. That reminds me, actually, when I was in college, I staffed a crisis hotline, and we had a training on communication styles, and they taught us how to mirror tone, but also physically. Like they were like, oh, someone's down here, you go down here. If someone's up here, you go up here. And I think AI is has a bit of trouble with tone still, and you heckled probably pretty nicely. Like you should see us test. Like we're like, stop talking, like you suck, you know.
Right.
If you need an expert, I can
Yeah.
my services.
No, like to mimic like a customer yelling or cursing or whatever, and the AI is so cool about it.
Right, like can it detect a change in tone, frustration, and does it adapt? Like I'm quite interested in understanding how you're training the models.
I think that would make me more angry.
Oh, if they...
Like, yeah, because I doubt, there's no doubt you will catch me screaming, like, just put a human on the phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want a calm computer voice, like, responding. Just, I want it to happen, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in that case, it would happen with our tool, right? If people say, connect me to someone, you should have someone available, is like our recommendation. But for me, that is where when I was testing, I was like, this is where I picked up on the fact that it was AI. If I had to guess.
That's a good point.
Yes.
Because it would
doesn't
say,
it doesn't shift emotion. Yeah.
Let me try that again with you. And I'm like,
exactly.
wait, what? Like,
I'm
pissed.
Yeah.
I think it'll get there though.
So going back to the company, like, can you give us an idea of kind of like the size, what stage you're at, when and where it was founded? Yeah.
So it's a New York company founded in 2020. So it's been a little over 4 years, I think. It's around 100 people. And we're at Series A. So we raised our first 40 million, I think a few years ago, and then another 40 million this year to launch the AI phone agents. Yeah.
Congrats. And
thank you.
When did you join?
I joined 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Do you know what employee number you were? Just for fun?
I don't remember. No, I like around 80 something. Yeah.
Okay. And you're the lead product manager. How big's your team?
Yeah, so our product team is 4 product managers. I'm one of them, and a designer, and we each own an area of the product. So right now I own the agent experience.
I'm really interested in understanding how you went about choosing, like, in the midst of this explosion of AI, right, in the landscape generally, which I think happened like last year with OpenAI kind of in the arms race. How did you go about like picking a large language model or like certain programs or even like AI vendors? Like how did that all work?
Yeah, so I didn't build the phone agent. I work more on the platform and the integration piece. So I own the agent experience. So it was really for us about how do we make sure that it is reliable and that it can place many calls at once and that it doesn't interfere with the human agents' interactions. I think for the model, I think Alex Ulmer, who's the lead PM that owned that piece, tested a few with his team. And I think the cool thing about these models is putting a POC together is not as hard as it used to be. I also think, and this is like, the perspective is they're kind of like converging together. Like soon you're not going to be able to tell them apart, and the differentiator isn't going to be on the quality. It's going to be more around the build and the testing and the iteration and the foundation. And so that's where our head is at, is really like, how do we make them customizable? How do we make it user-friendly? Like even you mentioned, right, you asked if you ask a mundane, like generic question, you're not going to get a good response. These admins that are the leads of service teams or sales teams, they're not technical people. They don't know the etiquette for prompting an AI agent. It's something that has to be learned. It's not that hard to learn, right? Because it's just text and you can test and place a call and then edit again and place a call. But we want to help them learn faster.
And it's what showed me was I had a client who actually built tool, let's call it, for script writing for content creators. And it was really cool. It would take like your existing content, feed it in, and it was amazing, honestly, when he demoed it to me. Another former Datadog Garner, we'll shout him out. I was shocked. I was like, what? We just made up some stuff and it gave us like a legit script in like 5 minutes. So for example, for like the podcast, it would just pull what we've done in the past, give us maybe like guest recommendations. We say, Yael's coming on, give us some questions in a script.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And then what I did though was say, how much of this is like your secret sauce and how much of it is just like the model that you relied on? So I went directly to the model and asked the same stuff and like nowhere even close.
Yeah, the secret sauce is we have the info. We have the prompts, right? Like we know about the customers. We have the old call transcripts. We have admins in the tool saying these are our goals and this is what conversion means. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, no, that's I guess the point I was making is like that is
Totally.
It's as good as how you train it.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's like which model you're training, less important than what you're doing to train.
What are you training on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's learn a little bit about your kind of background in history, right? So
Sure.
we like to kind of know like where your history in tech, like, but you can go as far back, like where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
Okay. Well, I was born in Israel and I moved to the States when I was 9 because my dad wanted to start a startup, which is kind of funny thinking back because Israel is so known for startup culture now. But yeah, I grew up in the Silicon Valley, so I was always around tech. Because I didn't speak English when I moved, math and music were like the 2 subjects I was best at naturally because they didn't require the language. And that is what I ended up like wanting to pursue.
That's funny. Those are my favorite subjects.
Well, they're very linked as well. Like it's like the same
100%.
part of the brain. But yeah, so I did like a little bit of math research in high school and I thought I was going to be a math major. And then the more I talked to like number theorists, the more I realized like you keep going down the path, like less and less people start to understand what you do. And I wanted to have like more of that human impact. So I did a software stint at Microsoft, transitioned very quickly into product. And then as soon as I graduated, started at Datadog as a product manager.
And where'd you go to school?
Harvard.
Okay.
Yeah. And I studied computer science and psychology. And every time I told people this, they would say like, the intersection is so interesting. And I would have to clarify like, it is, but I like them separately.
Yeah.
I was gonna
like either like
You're not focused on the intersection.
be in tech or be a
the company you're
therapist.
at now maybe is kind of that intersection.
Yeah, I find honestly being a product manager is at the intersection in the sense that you have to be technical, but so much of it is about having empathy for the customer, having good collaboration and like making the people that you work with feel heard because it's just a lot of people fires.
That's good advice in general. As lawyers, we can identify with that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I worked at Datadog for a little over 2 years launching the network
right
monitoring. Yeah, that was a lucky first job. I learned a lot at that company and worked with some great
One thing
folks,
I will say
like Aaron.
Datadog did very well was hire the right people. Like if I have any imposter syndrome, it's like, how did I sneak in there?
Yeah, same. I think everyone also had like a great work ethic. Like they weren't just smart, but they were humble and they knew how to grind when it was needed. So I launched the network performance monitoring product, which looked at connectivity between microservices and the cloud.
That's definitely not that. That's how we met.
Exactly.
What's this new thing we're selling? Who's in charge of this?
And then later took over the live processing product as part of the infrastructure monitoring suite. And then I took a year off to travel full time and release a music album.
Oh, amazing.
Which was like both lifelong
What's your
dreams.
instruments of choice?
My voice, but I play piano and guitar sort of badly. Yeah.
Do you have like classical training on any of this or training, I guess?
I took piano lessons when I was a kid for like a decade and singing I've done my whole life, like ever since I could.
So fun fact about me, that was my first instrument until puberty hit. And
then
so
you
I was
switched to
in
guitar?
choirs and stuff. Yeah. So my voice changed and it's honestly a blessing in disguise because I had to actually learn about music. I feel like when you're young or people who get into singing, you're just mimicking something you've heard versus like understanding how music works.
Right.
So I had taken piano lessons and stuff, but like when that changed, that's when like I found guitar, which is ultimately what I learned. Yeah, I got on the radio when I was like 8 years old for singing Somewhere Out There from An American Tale.
We have to find this.
I know.
I have it on cassette.
Stop both of you.
I have it on cassette. I mean, luckily I'm old enough that there's no like YouTube of this or anything.
I was wondering about the genre of your
It's
music.
indie pop,
Nice.
becoming a bit more rock angst, but still got those like synths and electric guitar layers. Yeah, I just put out a new song.
Congrats.
You want to check it out? It's called
Yeah,
Back
we'll
Tattoo.
link to it in the show notes for sure.
And it's definitely, it's like slightly more rock leaning.
What's it called? You repeat the name.
Back Tattoo?
Back Tattoo.
So did
Love that.
have you taken like songwriting courses and whatnot?
No. And I think most songwriters haven't. Like, you just write a lot of songs and they're mostly trash. And then like eventually,
I think that was one of the
They're okay.
best things I've learned was like the science aspect of that.
you took a songwriting class?
Yeah. So
What was that like?
Well, I took it. So in high school, all I did was play guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out the leader of our orchestra played guitar. And I got him to teach me like writing music. So like I learned counterpoint and all this other like technical aspect of like how you write the music of a song. Then in college, I went to Emerson and they were part of this consortium for the arts up in Boston. And I was able to place into a songwriting class at Berkeley College of Music up there and took this class there. It was so cool because it was my senior year, so I was kind of like screwing off anyway. I was taking a pass-fail, so I basically just had to show up. And then Berkeley is like, this is a school for musicians. So like when I was in college, is like John Mayer had like just dropped out of Berkeley to like start his career, right?
nice.
So like that was like the most recent success story. But it was cool because you got to hear from like real musicians who are trying to do this. But yeah, you learn a little bit that it's not as trial and error as you think. Like there is, especially for pop, there is like a lot of
There's kind of a formula
aspect to it. And I think what's interesting, like how you said math and music are similar, they're very similar in the aspect of like you need to understand the rules so that you can look for like either ways to break it or ways to solve something in a different way. But yeah, that
I agree.
That class was awesome.
Maybe I should take a class.
Yeah, I think you'd enjoy it for sure.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of pattern recognition in music writing. And I find, I told you before, I took a stand-up class and like that really broke down for me, like how do you write a bit and what makes it funny? It's like a similar, I think there's similar structure to music when it comes to chord progression, when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to hear from you, Yael, as a product manager, how you, like, what you find works the best in terms of getting cross-functional success to happen, because that's kind of the name of the game when you're overseeing in a very project management kind of role.
Yeah. I think this is not going to surprise you, but relationships are like a big piece of it. And I tell this to anyone new that joins, like get to know people before you start asking them for things.
Oh my God.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I take the mindset as a PM because I've seen other successful PMs do this really well of like, my job is to serve the people around me to do their best work. In a way, like I'm not the expert in any of the roles, right? Like I couldn't design or code or sell the product by myself. That's not my skill set. My skill set is to bring that out of you.
For sure.
And whatever you need to make that happen, like that is my role. And that's true for customers too, right? Like,
Exactly,
and like logistically, okay, there are some things that are under my umbrella, but I think that's what I love about product is like your job is so different every day. It's kind of whatever needs doing.
To your point, right, and Kieran will remember this, when we were breaking out like a specific product counsel kind of function within the legal department, we thought of product as the different products all have a different like mini CEO. Yeah. That's the product manager. And we are trying to be their mini GC within that product. So, legal is like that too, especially in a small company, is you're a jack of all trades. Even if you don't want to be, you're the lawyer they're going to come to. Yeah. And the relationship side, I've always realized is like probably the most important to my success is the other people feel good about working with me versus how good am I? It's like kind of to what we were saying before. If they don't like working with me, how good I am doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I also, like, issues come up all the time. So it's being able to work through that, or over Slack, something didn't come across right. Like, if you have that level of trust, you're going to get past
You
it.
just described the beginning of my career. So in the spirit of this podcast, as we like to champion the efforts of our peers and colleagues, I wanted to tell the audience that our co-host Kieran Bath is also a newly published poet. Kieran's debut poetry collection, Instructions for Bano, travels through the timelines and geographies of the women in her family to understand the inherited consequences of becoming a South Asian bride. The collection beautifully addresses how to be part of a family and also one's own person. We couldn't be more proud. More information and a link to purchase your own copy can be found in the show notes of this episode. So obviously we're like a New York focused podcast. So tell us about, like, when did you first come to New York? How'd you start here? It sounds like you got the job from Dave's Dog and just
Well, it's true, but I had other what I thought were better offers at the time elsewhere.
We weren't telling. Well, now we're telling everyone.
Well, I mean, it turns out I think it was the best decision, and for all the reasons. But I picked it because I wanted to work in New York. So the city, luckily, brought me to that role, which kicked off my career. I think I'd always wanted to come here because of the music scene, because I grew up in an area that was so tech forward. And I wanted to be in a place where tech wasn't the only aspect of myself.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think it's really easy here to meet people that
we hear that
don't
a lot,
work in tech.
Like that's all there is out there. Versus New York has it, but has way more than just that.
Yeah, it's not the whole thing. So I moved right after college, and then during the pandemic, obviously in the travels, I took a break, and then I came back as soon as I could. And I think now that I'm here, I just signed a lease for like another 16 months.
Nice.
In Park Slope, and this is the closest feeling I've had to home since like living at home. So I'm here for the long run, I hope.
So we all love New York. What are like some of your favorite parts about it? Especially now that you're here.
Yeah. I mean, I found my people here. Like, I think it's the sense of home that was very hard for me to find in other places. I think because it's just so diverse. For me, it's a cappella people, open mic people, stand-up people, right? Like the creatives that have a dream, and maybe they're not fully living it out, but they're trying their best. And they have all these interests and have different perspectives for me. I think
also what's cool about that too is it's juxtaposed with the best people in the world doing it are here too, right? So you get like the exposure to experts.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm like a nomad at heart. It's why I keep traveling and keep leaving. But I think this is the first place that has made me feel, maybe London's close, but there's no place like New York for giving me that feeling of discovery that I get when I'm abroad, where like I don't know, I see this like group of people just like dancing to music on the street, or I go to a show and it feels like magical, and like I found it, even though like I'm not the first to discover it.
With that, yeah.
I think I find that moment a lot here, and it keeps me around.
There's a lot of new experiences you can have constantly.
Yeah.
Like you'll never do it all, no matter how long you live here, because things are always changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it still feels like quaint enough in a way.
In the way anyone's described
in a way that like a hidden gem is like, it's not like everyone knows about it and everyone's in line, right?
Yeah,
like there's like little pockets that feel very intimate, and that gets me excited.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of smaller communities within this large one. So we had asked, actually, I'll give credit where it's due. The producer Brian suggested this as like a segment with the guests about like a quote or motto that you found like influential, or you modeled behavior after, and you were like, "Ooh, I have one." So if you wouldn't mind being our inaugural,
I'm honored. No, I gotta give props to my dad on this one. He really instilled this early on. It's not his original thought. Actually, this comes from Fred Kaufman. Yeah. Have you heard of player versus victim?
No.
So the motto is like, be a player, not a victim. Mm-hmm. And the mentality is it's really around agency. Like Fred Kaufman claims that most people are victims in their lives, right? Like I don't like my job, or I don't like this friend, or I don't want to go to this, or I don't want to do that, or I'm not talented enough, or whatever, right? These are all things we tell ourselves because it's easier to detract blame and to say, well, it's not me, it's my circumstance, right? It's just really hard to do it, or I'm just not feeling well, or whatever it is. And the people that become successful and can find fulfilling experiences doing what they want to do, I think, are players that say,
100%.
okay, well, it's hard and I'm tired and I'm sick, but what can I do about it, right? So I don't like my job. Well, I can talk to my manager, or why don't I like my job? Like maybe I need to improve this relationship, or maybe I quit, right? Like I always have optionality in the matter, and it's always in my hands. And no matter how much privilege you have, or what the circumstances are, like if you can take that mentality of, okay, what can I control and what can't I control? Like you can ultimately like move forward in the
I think this
situation.
is a big secret to success. I believe in this so much. Yeah. I don't know when I picked it up. It wasn't from parenting, but 100%. Like, what can I do about it is way more important of a question than why is it happening, or you know what I mean?
I totally agree, and I think like taking it back to just early life experiences, it's always been this revelation of, okay, how can I make myself feel way more empowered in this situation? Yeah. And that's how I'm going to get out of it. So I think it's the secret to like self-empowerment and being productive, actually, and shifting things.
So one thing I notice is I pick up when people are the victim all the time now.
Yeah,
Do you find that
ever since I learned this concept, I also picked up on areas in my life where I'm playing the victim, all the time. Like, because people love to complain. And I'm no different.
And New Yorkers love to complain. We love to complain.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that I don't do it anymore. Like there's a time and place to say, oh, woe is me. But then you move on.
Right.
I don't think it's about never complaining or not noticing when things aren't going your way. I look at it as like most of life happens to you. And what you can control is how you react to it. Yeah. So like personally, I work on how do I change my base reactions to things to be the person I want to be versus that complainer that's like, God damn it when this happens. Or and it's funny because like you will see your mind shift. Yeah. So like things happen to me now that a younger version of me would get angry, and I'm just like, whatever, maybe this is a good thing. Or
I think it's changed my life, particularly in thinking about how I spend my time. I think this is where I see people being the victim a lot, is like, I don't want to do this, or I'm too busy doing things I don't enjoy doing. And it's like, well, then
do something about it. Yeah, I get in arguments with people about it. Do you have a quote or motto you live by?
I thought about this, and I guess typical me, I'm going to kind of draw more from like the writing world, but there's a book called Art and Fear by two visual artists, and there's like a parable where there was a pottery class and the teacher kind of made two control groups. I don't know if you've heard of this, Yael. No, okay. So to one half, the teacher said, focus on quantity, so make as many pots as you can. And to the other, they said, to the students, just make one and focus on quality.
Oh, I do know this one.
Right. And then interestingly, the result was that the more beautiful and higher quality pot came out of the group that just kind of busted them out and just got to it. And the lesson, of course, is, it's this whole thing of don't let perfect be the enemy of good, but also making mistakes, producing, getting to the action of things and learning from them is really going to kind of take you there. So even if you have a fantastic idea, to not sit there and theorize and obsess, but to really put things in motion. So I think about that a lot. Like,
I like that one because to me, I think where a lot of people fail short, or at least a difference between them and I, is I always just figure I can change my mind. If I move and I don't like it, I start a podcast and it's not what I think it is, like I can just do something else. Yeah. Where I find a lot of people put too much like permanence into things that aren't permanent.
Yes.
I've even thought that way about law school. I was like, if I'm going to go, but if I don't like it, I'll drop out.
Yeah.
True.
And ended up liking it, which was weird. Just maybe sadomasochistic or whatever. But,
Definitely.
Good at all of us, I think.
yeah, right? We all enjoy that self-torture. But
How about you? Do you have...
yeah, the one that came to mind, I have a ton. I think about this a lot. I started writing a book about this kind of stuff. But the one that I learned, and this is a shout out to Laszlo, our GC, was it's not about you. So it took me a while to kind of understand what it meant, but what it means to me is like a lot of the things that you get angry about or whatever are from other people or an interaction or whatever. And like whatever's causing that probably isn't about you, and you're making it about you when it isn't.
Yeah.
So don't take it so personal. It's not about you.
Yeah.
And it has like changed a lot for me because I used to be, I'd say the one big difference for me is I used to be way more like short-tempered and hot-headed. And like I had to train that out. Like how do I not react that way? And this was like a good one. So it's like someone does something that should get a reaction out of me. It's like, dude, it's not about me. I'm having a good day.
Yeah.
Sorry you're pissed off or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like
My life is good. It's not about me.
That's
whatever.
so true. This is a hard one in practice for me.
It is hard, but it's very
true every
valuable.
time. Yeah.
If you're talking about like how you spend your time, this will give you more time back. Like, why am I worried about this situation? It's not even about me.
Yeah.
They yelled at me about, what did I do? I didn't do anything. Boom, move on. It especially helps in big situations where, like, let's say your job's on the line because of a bad interaction or whatever. Sometimes it is about, maybe you screwed up, right? So it's not to just push blame off all the time. But if you identify when it's not about you, which a lot of the time is like the emotional side of it, is tied to this thing that has nothing to do with you. You just want to fight back because you feel disrespected or what. It's not about you. Who cares? Yael, thank you for being here and for sharing with us. Any other parting words, or where can people find Regal? We're going to post in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. Go to Regal.ai. We have a very easy to use demo for the AI phone agent, which will blow your mind. And if you want to check out my music, I'm on Spotify as Yael, Yael Gold.
Yeah, and I would say go to Regal.ai. It's fun just to see kind of like where the state of this technology is right now, whether you're going to buy it or use it or not. Like, you're going to interact with it at some point.
Learn.
So I thought it was like a cool way. All right. Anyway, thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Catch you all next time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Empire State of Grind. If you like what you heard, please share, like, and subscribe. You can find more information about the guests and sponsors in the show notes, and special thanks to our sponsors and our producer, Brian Neiman. We'll be back with new episodes twice a month, and as we say in New York, peace, we out.